of young travelers seeks shelter in a mysterious roadside inn with no name. By morning, the building is gone, and so is reality as they knew it. The Nameless Inn is a descent into a place that feeds on memories, twists identities, and traps souls in a never-ending loop of forgotten terror. Watch this spine-chilling adaptation of the horror story The Nameless Inn and discover what lies beyond the final door, if you dare. The road narrowed to a thread of gravel, winding between tall pine trees that crowded the path like silent spectators. The car's tires crunched over loose stones, a sound that echoed unnaturally loud in the hush of the forest. The sun had slipped behind the canopy, and what little light remained filtered through in cold, fractured beams. "Are you sure this is the right way?" Mai asked, her voice tight. She sat in the front passenger seat, fingers clenching the map they had stopped trusting miles ago. Dewey, behind the wheel, forced a grin. "It's a shortcut, saves us nearly 2 hours. The GPS said it's fine." "The GPS stopped talking 15 minutes ago," said Lynn from the back seat, her face pale in the dim light. "And I haven't seen a house, or a sign, or even a bird." "Relax," said Hui, trying to sound casual, but even he couldn't hide the tension in his voice. "It's just a forest. We'll be back on the main road soon." Outside, the trees thickened. The road ahead was barely visible, shrouded in a rising mist that clung to the trunks and spilled across the ground like smoke. Then, as suddenly as the forest had closed in, it parted. A clearing emerged, and in the middle of it stood a building. Old, 2 stories, with peeling white paint and ivy strangling the wooden walls. A crooked signpost stood in the overgrown yard, but whatever had been written on it had faded completely. It pointed nowhere. The inn looked like it had been abandoned for years. Yet lights flickered behind the lace-curtained windows. "No way," Lynn whispered. "That wasn't on the map." "It's kinda perfect," Dewey said, cutting the engine. "We were gonna camp, but this is way better, right?" No one answered. They stepped out of the car. The cold hit them instantly. It was deeper than forest chill. It sank into their bones. There was no wind, no insects, no birds. Only the sound of their footsteps on dead leaves and the distant rhythmic creak of something inside the inn, like a swing or a rocking chair. As they approached the porch, the door opened by itself. A woman stood there, thin, gray-haired, in a dark dress that looked stitched from another century. She didn't speak. She only stepped aside, eyes never blinking. Dewey hesitated, then walked in. The others followed. Inside, the inn was much warmer. Too warm. The air smelled like dust, old flowers, and something faintly metallic. The reception desk was empty. A bell sat on it, rusted and silent. "We need rooms for 1 night," Dewey said, trying to sound polite. The woman nodded. No smile. No movement except her hand reaching under the desk and retrieving 4 tarnished keys. "Upstairs," she said. Her voice was so soft it seemed to glide across the air like a whisper carried on fog. Each key had a number etched in it. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Room 1 didn't exist. No one questioned it. Their footsteps echoed on the creaking stairs. The walls were lined with paintings, portraits, but the faces had been scratched out, deep gouges where eyes should have been, mouths erased with knife marks. Lynn stopped in front of one. "It's still wet," she murmured, touching the frame. "Don't," Mai almost said, but it was too late. The faint sound of breathing passed behind them. They turned. Nothing. The hallway stretched long and dim, the light bulbs flickering in slow, rhythmic intervals, as if breathing with the building. They found their rooms. They were small but clean, almost too clean. No dust, no cobwebs. The windows wouldn't open, and the mirrors were covered with cloth. When Mai tried to remove hers, the fabric resisted. It clung to the glass like skin. That night, the inn breathed. Mai lay awake, listening to the creaks above her room. There was no third floor. Dewey heard whispers behind his wall. Not words, just the cadence of conversation, rising and falling, occasionally erupting into laughter that turned sharp and bitter at the end. Lynn's window showed the clearing outside, bathed in silver moonlight. But the shadows moved, wrong, not in sync with the trees, as if something unseen was crawling through the grass, just out of view. He had the worst night. He dreamt of a woman standing at the foot of his bed. Not the one from the front door. This one was taller, with eyes like cracked mirrors and a mouth that stretched too far when she smiled. She leaned down, whispering something in his ear. When he woke, the pillow was wet, but not with sweat. The next morning, the sun rose. The forest thinned. The air was clean, but the inn was gone. The four friends woke not in beds, but on grass. No structure around them, no porch, no inn, just an empty field surrounded by trees. Their car was still there, but the keys were missing, and so was room 1's key, which none of them had ever taken. Only then did they notice the footprints, a fifth set, leading away into the trees. And somewhere in the distance, faint as breath on glass, the sound of a door slowly creaking shut. They stood in the field for a long time, unmoving, as if by sheer stillness they could force the world to make sense again. The grass beneath their feet was damp. Dew clung to their clothes like fingers. The clearing stretched out around them in every direction, bordered by silent trees that now felt impossibly distant. What had once been a forest felt more like a barrier, a wall of trunks and shadows. There was no sign of the inn, not a broken plank, not a footprint near where the porch should have been, only a smooth, empty patch of grass. Mai knelt and ran her fingers through the soil. It was undisturbed. "It's like it was never here," she whispered. "But it was," Hui said, still staring at the spot where his room should have been. "We slept here. I had a dream." "No, it wasn't a dream. There was someone in my room." Lynn wrapped her arms around herself. "What time is it?" Dewey checked his phone. The screen stayed black. "Battery's dead. Mine too. Mine won't even turn on." The wind rose suddenly, rushing through the trees, whispering in low, urgent tones that sounded far too much like voices. They all turned in unison toward the direction the fifth set of footprints had gone. They were deeper now, clearer, fresh. The tracks were human, but wrong, too narrow at the heel, and the toes dragged like something was being pulled or limping. None of them spoke it aloud, but they all knew. Room 1 had been real, and someone or something had left it. "We need to leave," Lynn said, her voice brittle. They rushed to the car. The doors were unlocked, but when Dwee turned the key, the engine gave a weak cough and fell silent. Again and again, until there was nothing but a faint clicking sound. A heartbeat dying. They sat in silence, listening to the stillness settle again. Somewhere deep in the woods, a branch cracked. Not under the weight of wind, but something heavier, something walking. Mai was the first to open the door. "There has to be a road. We followed one here, right? We walk." Dewey grabbed a flashlight from the glove compartment. Ling and Hui took their packs. No one looked back as they left the clearing. The footprints still trailed ahead into the trees, but they didn't follow them. They went the other way. The forest had changed. Or maybe they hadn't noticed it before. The trees were twisted, leaning toward the path like they had bent over to watch. Bark peeled in strips like old wallpaper, revealing pale wood beneath, like flesh beneath skin. It was quiet at first, too quiet. Then, faintly, a bell. It came from nowhere, and it sounded just like the one on the reception desk. Ting, ting, soft, repeating, getting closer. Mai froze. "Don't turn around," she said. "Why?" Hui whispered. "Because it's behind us." The bell rang again, louder, right at their backs. They ran. Branches tore at them. Roots clawed their ankles. The flashlight swung wildly, throwing distorted shadows across the trees. Dewey tripped and almost fell. Lynn pulled him back to his feet. They didn't stop running until the sound of the bell was gone, and that was when they saw it. The inn, standing exactly as before. Right in front of them. No path had led them to it. It had appeared like it had been waiting. The windows were lit again, the same flickering glow behind the lace curtains. The crooked signpost stood in the yard, blank as ever. "I don't understand," Mai said, breathless. "We were running away from it." Lynn looked behind them. There was no clearing, no car, only trees. "It moved," she said. "No," Hui corrected, voice cracking. "We didn't leave." The front door creaked open. The same woman stood in the doorway. Same black dress, same gray hair, same stillness. But this time, she was smiling. Her mouth stretched wide, too wide, like her skin might tear. Her teeth were small, too many, like they belonged to someone else entirely. She raised her hand, not beckoning, pointing at them. Mai took a step back. The bell inside rang, loud, once. Ting! They turned and ran again. This time, they didn't choose a direction. They just moved. Trees flashed past. The air felt thicker. Breathing became harder. It was like running through water. No matter which way they turned, the forest bent, tilted, repeated. They passed the same hollow log twice. The same bent tree with the knot shaped like an eye. The third time, they stopped. "We're going in circles," Dewey gasped, falling to his knees. "No," said Mai, "it's worse. The forest is folding, trapping us." Lynn looked around, panicked. "We can't stay here. We have to do something." "What if we go back?" Hui said. "Into the inn. What if we confront it? Maybe there are answers in there, something that will let us go. You want to go back in? Lynn stared at him. After what we saw? What choice do we have? He snapped. We're rats in a maze, and the only door is the one that keeps opening. No one argued. They walked back, and again, there it was, exactly where it had always been. This time, they stepped through the door without waiting. The lobby was the same, but the lights were dimmer. The air smelled stronger. Mold, iron, old things. The woman was gone, or hiding. The bell on the desk was gone too. In its place sat a key. Room 1. It gleamed like it had just been polished. No one touched it. Mai looked up the stairs. They were shrouded in shadow. The portraits were still there, but the gouged-out faces were gone. Now the paintings were whole, 4 of them. Dewey, Lin, Hui, Mai. Perfect likenesses, staring down at themselves with glassy eyes. And beside them, a 5th portrait. It was turned to face the wall. Lin reached out, hand trembling. "Don't," Mai said, but it was too late. She turned it over. The painting showed a figure, tall, dressed in black. A pale face with no features, just a smooth expanse of skin, except where the eyes should be, 2 small bells were embedded, and from somewhere above them, on the 2nd floor, something began to walk, slow, deliberate. The boards creaked, once, then again, heavier than any of their own steps. The sound stopped just above the stairs. Then the light bulbs began to flicker, one by one, descending. With each flicker, the air grew colder. Mai turned to the others. "We have to go to room 1. "What?" Dewey whispered. "It's waiting," she said, "and I think it wants us to see." The last light at the top of the stairs died. Then, ting! The sound of the bell echoed down the staircase. They stepped forward and began to climb. The stairs groaned with every step, as though the wood itself was reluctant to bear their weight. The light bulbs overhead had stopped flickering. They had gone out completely, plunging the hallway into a darkness so dense it felt alive, breathing against their skin like something wet and cold. Dewey held the flashlight tight, its narrow beam cutting a path up the staircase. The light trembled in his grip, not because his hands were shaking, but because the flashlight itself seemed to pulse, dim, then bright, then dim again, like a heartbeat out of sync with the human world. When they reached the top, they paused. A long hallway stretched before them, lined with doors on either side. The wallpaper peeled in strips, exposing dark wood beneath that pulsed faintly, as if veins ran beneath it. The smell here was stronger. Old water, mildew, and something else, something sharp and metallic, like blood drying on rusted iron. Room 1 was at the very end of the hallway. Its door was different. It was made of black wood, almost charred in texture, and no doorknob marred its surface. Only the keyhole, waiting. Mai reached into her pocket. The key was there. None of them had taken it. None had touched it. Yet now it sat cold and heavy in her palm. She turned to the others. "Once we open this, we don't know what happens next." Hui's jaw was clenched. eyes locked on the door. We passed the point of knowing a long time ago. Mai stepped forward. The key slid into the lock with a soft click, like a whisper of agreement. She turned it. The door opened inward with no resistance. Inside was a room that didn't fit. It was too big, far too big. The space behind the door was vast, a chamber shrouded in gray fog. With no visible walls or ceiling, the floor was made of old, cracked tiles that stretched endlessly in all directions. In the center stood a single object, a full-length mirror. Its frame was made of bone-white wood, intricately carved with symbols that shifted when not directly observed. The glass was flawless, polished, still, but it reflected nothing. Not the room, not them, not even light. Dewey stepped closer, slowly. "It's not a mirror," he murmured. "It's a hole." They approached together, the mirror looming larger with every step. There were no other furnishings, no bed, no chairs, no dust, only this silent void masquerading as glass. Then Lynn stopped. She turned her head slightly. "What's that sound?" They froze. There it was, a faint scratching, not loud, but frantic. It came from within the mirror. Mai leaned forward, heart hammering. The scratching stopped. Then a handprint appeared, pressed from the inside. 5 fingers, slender, bloodless. The glass didn't crack. It rippled, as though it were water disturbed from beneath. The handprint disappeared. Then another appeared, and another. Soon the mirror was alive with movement, ghostly palms slapping the inside of the glass, each one soundless, each one smearing long streaks across the surface. The silence was worse than any scream. Mai stumbled back. "They're trapped." "Who?" Dewey asked. And then something leaned forward, a face stretching toward the glass. They didn't scream, couldn't. Every instinct screamed to run, but their feet were buried in the cold, cracked tiles. The faceless thing tilted its head. Then it spoke, but not aloud. Its voice scraped across their minds, dry as bone dust. "One always stays. One always stays. One always stays." The mirror shimmered. Then it showed them something. Not their reflections, but themselves, lying in beds, motionless, pale, in their rooms, as if they had never woken, as if everything since had happened inside a dream, stitched into the seams of death. Lynn whimpered, "This isn't real." The voice answered again, this time from behind them. "Then why do you hear the bell?" Ting! They turned. No one stood behind them, but the door to room 1 was closed now, and the hallway gone. Only fog, only the mirror. Mai's breathing quickened. "We have to break it." Dewey grabbed a broken tile from the floor, lifted it above his head, and slammed it against the glass. The sound that came was not of shattering. It was laughter, a low, crawling sound. Like fingernails dragged across a dry throat. The mirror absorbed the impact. The ripples pulsed outward. Then it began to show new images. A road, their car, the forest. But everything was wrong. The trees were upside down. The sky was red, and the sun was black. And in the car were their bodies, still, slack-jawed, eyes open, bleeding from the ears. Dude rocked the tile. "No," he whispered. "We left. We got out." Mai shook her head. "No, we never left the inn." The mirror pulsed again. This time, it showed them something worse. A fifth figure, standing among them, in every image, tall, dressed in black, face smooth and blank, always just behind. Never seen until now. Lin turned, wildly searching the empty space. "There's no way out!" The voice came again. "One always stays, the others are welcomed back." The floor beneath them began to crack. Lines spidered outward, glowing faintly. The mirror started pulling. Not physically, it pulled through memory, through guilt, through the moments they thought they forgot. Mai saw the girl in the river, the one she hadn't saved. Dewey saw the accident, the man on the bike, how he never called the ambulance. Lin saw the pills in her drawer, the ones she almost gave to her sister. Hui saw the locked deer, and his father's voice screaming behind it. Their sins, their secrets, drawn into the glass, feeding it. And the mirror smiled, not with a mouth, but with recognition. Lin screamed first, a pure, wordless sound. She turned and ran into the fog, vanished. No footsteps, no sound, just gone. Hui followed, then Dewey. Mai stayed, staring at the mirror. The handprints had returned. One was hers, and behind it, her own face. Not quite right. The eyes too dark, the smile too slow. It raised a finger, pressed it to the glass, then beckoned. Ting! The bell rang again, and the room grew cold. Mai didn't remember choosing to move. One moment she stood before the mirror, her reflection grinning without her, beckoning with that slow, patient finger. The next, she was stumbling backward out of room 1 into a hallway that shouldn't have existed. The corridor was no longer empty. It breathed. Walls pulsed in and out as if the inn itself had lungs. Every breath brought with it a creaking, fibrous groan, like old wood warping under pressure. The wallpaper was gone, stripped away, revealing something beneath the surface that looked too much like stitched skin. Black thread ran in crisscrossing patterns, holding the walls together, and from behind them, faintly, the whispers began. Not words at first, just a wet, papery rustling, like mouths forming syllables without sound. Then came the voices, high-pitched, childlike, speaking just beyond comprehension. Don't look, don't breathe, don't remember. Mai staggered, her breath coming in short bursts. Her legs felt heavy, like the air had thickened into syrup. Each step dragged her further into the corridor, deeper into the belly of something pretending to be a building. Behind her, room 1's door slowly shut with a click. The hallway lights buzzed above, blinking in sickly pulses. The fixtures now held not bulbs, but softly glowing sacks, like translucent eggs, pulsing with a heartbeat that wasn't hers. She passed room 3, then room 4. The numbers were shifting, flickering between digits, like they couldn't remember what they were supposed to be. Then she heard it, a voice, low, familiar. Mai. It came from behind the wall, right behind her. She froze, pressing her hand against the surface. It was warm, slightly damp. The voice came again, this time loud. Fingernails scraped from the other side, slow, desperate, scritch, scritch, scritch. Then a whisper, pressed close. It's not real. Don't let it in. It's wearing me like skin. Mai jerked away, heart pounding. She turned to run, but the hallway had changed again. Now it narrowed. The walls bowed inward, too close together. The ceiling sloped low. The only way forward was to crawl. Somewhere behind her, a door creaked open. Then a soft, dragging footstep, followed by another. And a whisper that crawled over her shoulder like breath. One always stays. She dropped to her knees and crawled. Dot. The walls brushed her arms, smearing her sleeves with something slick. The ceiling dripped. She kept her head low, moved forward. Forward was the only direction that existed now. She didn't realize she was weeping until she tasted the salt. The passage opened suddenly into a small room. She crawled out, coughing, and sat upright. The room was square, windowless, its floor made of old wood that bent beneath her weight. A single light swung overhead, casting long, slow arcs that made shadows dance like they were mocking her. In the center of the room was a chair, and Dewey. He sat motionless, head bowed. "Dewey," she whispered, rushing toward him. She grabbed his shoulders, shook him. He looked up and blinked, the wrong way. His eyelids closed from side to side like a snake's. His smile was wide, too wide, and he whispered, "You took too long. I had to make room." Then his skin began to peel. Not from rot, not from decay. It unzipped, and something stepped out. Something tall, something smooth, something faceless. It reached for her. Mai screamed and ran. The door slammed shut behind her. She was in another hallway now. This one was different. All the doors were open, and inside each, a version of herself, sleeping, screaming, drowning, burning, bleeding. She passed room 2, hers. Her mirror still covered. She hesitated, then stepped inside. Everything was untouched, just as she'd left it. But on the bed was a note. A torn piece of paper, yellowed and stained with something brown. They feed on memory. They wear your guilt like a mask. If you forget, you become. If you remember, you bleed. A creak behind her. She turned. The mirror cloth had slicked, a corner exposed. Her reflection watched her, but it wasn't copying her movements. It raised its hand first, pressed a finger to its lips, then whispered, "Shh, it hears." Mai turned. In the doorway stood Lynn, hair matted, eyes wild. She was barefoot. Her feet left wet footprints that hissed against the floorboards. "Mai," she said, but her voice was wrong, flat, like it had been practiced, too perfect. Mai stepped back. "Where did you go?" Lynn tilted her head. "I found the exit." Her smile was twitching. "Do you want to see it?" Mai didn't answer. Behind Lynn, something moved. A shadow with no owner. It reached through the wall, clawed fingers, no nails, just torn skin and bone. Mai ran. The hallway twisted again. Stairs appeared where they shouldn't. She climbed without thinking, the inn shifting beneath her like a beast in its sleep. She reached the top floor, room 5. It stood alone, the door open. Inside, nothing. Just a circle of salt, a chair, a juro, and a candle burning with a blue flame. She stepped into the circle. For the first time, the air felt still. The whispering stopped. The walls held their shape. She opened the journal. Inside, the pages were filled with frantic writing. Some entries crossed out, others scrawled in shaking hands. One passage stood out, over and over, written in every margin. Don't trust the walls. Don't trust your face. Don't follow your name. Mai closed the journal, sat in the chair, and waited. The bell rang again, far away, growing closer. But this time, she did not run. She reached for the candle and blew it out. When the flame vanished, the room didn't go dark. Instead, it breathed. The shadows did not recede as they should have. They surged forward, bending around Mai like liquid smoke. The circle of salt flared briefly, emitting a hiss that echoed with a sound like dry laughter, then dimmed to a faint glow beneath her feet. She wasn't alone anymore. Something watched from the corners, not with eyes, but with hunger. Then, without warning, the room shattered. It wasn't a physical explosion. No debris, no collapse. Just the sense that space itself had blinked, and with it, reality had lost focus. The walls pulsed, then folded inward. The ceiling stretched. The floor trembled beneath her as if the building was trying to breathe her in. Mai stood quickly, heart hammering. The candle was gone. So was the journal. The circle of salt had smeared, broken by invisible fingers. The floor beneath her was no longer wood, but stone, cold, cracked, ancient. And ahead, a long hallway had appeared. Unlike the others, this one was silent, completely, utterly. No whispers, no creaks. Even her own footsteps were swallowed by the air, like the inn had devoured sound itself. At the far end was a door, black iron, riveted, heavy. Set into the door was a clock, large, ornate, its face yellowed with age. Roman numerals warped into crooked shapes. Its hands pointed to 12, both of them, frozen, motionless. As she approached, she felt a strange pull in her chest, like time had forgotten her. Her heartbeat slowed, her breath thickened. Each step felt longer than the last, as if she were wading through molasses. She reached the door. The clock's glass was cracked. Behind it, something ticked, but the hands did not move. Tick, tick, tick. She leaned close and saw her own face reflected in the glass, but it wasn't moving either. Her reflection was frozen, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. Behind her reflection, a shape moved. Mai spun around. The hallway was empty, but the ticking grew louder. Tick, tick. Then the clock spoke. Its gears ground against each other like bones under pressure, and a soft, dry voice whispered from inside the mechanism. Time does not pass here. It waits. It watches. The door creaked open, slow and reluctant. Inside was a room unlike any other, circular, windowless, lined with dozens of clocks of every size, every age. Grandfather clocks, pocket watches, ornate cuckoo clocks, digital faces flashing nonsense digits, all of them broken, all of them stuck. And in the center of the room, a table. And on it, Hui. His body was laid flat, arms folded over his chest, eyes open, unblinking, skin pale as parchment. Mai rushed forward, calling his name. No response. She placed her ear to his chest. No heartbeat, but he was breathing, barely. And then she noticed the thin threads stretched from his fingertips, from his lips, from the corners of his eyes. They trailed upward into the ceiling, vanishing into the darkness above, pulled taut, like puppet strings. She tried to cut them, but her hands passed through as if they weren't real. The clocks began to tick again, all of them, not in sync, each one on its own rhythm. Tick-tock, tick-tick. Tock-tick-tock, a chorus of broken time. The room pulsed with each uneven beat. Then the air shifted. A new sound joined the ticking. Low, mechanical breathing. She turned. In the doorway stood the innkeeper, but not as before. Her dress was the same, black, long-sleeved. Her hands still pale and still, but her face gone. Not faceless like the creature in the mirror. It was worse. It was a clock, an old brass face embedded where her head should be, its hands spinning wildly. Faster and faster. Each tick of the spinning hands echoed with a metallic shriek. Her voice came from somewhere deep within the gears. He refused to forget. So we kept him. Paused. Mai backed away, heart pounding. "Let him go!" The hands stopped, pointed at her. "You must give us something in return." The ticking ceased. All clocks fell silent. The air pressed in. She whispered, "What do you want?" The innkeeper stepped closer. Her movements were stiff, like bones grinding against rusted joints. A second. Mai blinked. "What?" "A second of your time. One moment forgotten." She didn't understand until the air shimmered around her. Memories rose like steam from her skin. Lynn laughing in the car. Dewey singing out of tune. A shared glance with Hui under starlight. The forest, the fire, the fear. All of it hovered, flickering like film strips. Then, a hand reached from the shadows above. Long fingers, no flesh, only the shape of forgetting. It touched her forehead, and the memory vanished. She didn't know which, but something was gone. In its place, a cold silence bloomed. The strings holding Hui dissolved. He gasped, sat up, eyes wide. Mai rushed to him. "Mai?" he croaked. "I'm here." They embraced. His skin was ice. Then the clocks began to scream. Not tick, scream. One by one, they exploded. Gears flying like shrapnel, faces cracking, screams of metal and glass. The room trembled. The door slammed shut behind them. "You shouldn't have remembered." The voice was no longer calm. It bled with fury. The table beneath them split. The floor dropped, and they fell, spinning, twisting, time unraveling around them like shredded cloth. Mai clutched Hui as the darkness rose. And somewhere far above, the hands on the inn's great clock began to move. For the first time in years, but not forward, backward. The fall ended not with a crash, but with silence. Mai opened her eyes slowly. She lay on her side, her cheek pressed against cold stone. The air around her was thick, stale, heavy with the scent of damp earth and something older, something dead. She pushed herself upright, her muscles aching, her throat raw. "Hui?" she whispered. No answer. She turned quickly. He was still there, lying just a few feet away, but he wasn't moving. She crawled to him, hands trembling, and placed her ear against his chest. A heartbeat, slow, shallow, but fading. "Hui, wake up," she said, shaking him gently. "Come on, please." Still nothing. Then she noticed it. A line, thin and black, drawn across his forehead, like someone had sketched it there with a piece of charcoal. It wasn't ink. It pulsed, moved, like something alive just under the skin. She reached out to touch it. As her fingers neared, it split open. No blood, only darkness. From the line rose a whisper, low, breathless. He was already theirs. She yanked her hand back. The mark remained. But the whisper had stopped. She stood, eyes scanning the space around them. They were no longer in the inn. Not exactly. The walls were stone, curved inward, forming a tunnel that stretched in both directions. Faint lights flickered on sconces high above, casting long shadows that quivered as if alive. The inn hadn't expelled them. It had swallowed them deeper. She lifted Hoy over her shoulder. He was light, too light, like something inside him had been taken. She started down the tunnel. Footsteps echoed all around, even though hers were soft. It sounded like others were walking with her, always a few steps behind or ahead. Occasionally, she passed doors, each one different. Wooden, iron, glass, some shaped like mouths, some like coffins, all locked, all humming faintly, as if something on the other side was breathing, waiting. She didn't stop to open any. She kept moving until she saw the flickering glow of a larger chamber ahead. A grand doorway stood open. Inside, candlelight danced across dozens of tall mirrors arranged in a spiral, each one facing inward toward the center. Mai stepped through carefully, her breath catching in her throat. Each mirror reflected a version of her, some smiling, some crying, some with faces that weren't hers at all. But none showed Hui. He cast no reflection. She looked down. His eyes had opened, but they were pure white. No iris, no pupil, just milky glass. "Hui?" she whispered. He didn't blink, didn't breathe. Then, slowly, his mouth opened, and from it spilled a voice that wasn't his. "There were 4 of you. Now there are 3. Mai stumbled back. The mirrors began to whisper, each one vibrating, their glass quivering like skin over a drum. She turned in circles. The spiral of mirrors seemed endless. She couldn't see the entrance anymore, or the end. The voice came again, now from the walls, the floor, the space between thoughts. "One always stays. The others carry the echo." She dropped to her knees beside Hui. No, you can't have him. He's still here. He's still... A mirror near her cracked. A long fissure snaked across it. From the other side, something pressed forward. A hand. Pale, thin, fingers twitching. It tapped the glass once. Then again. Let him go or follow him in. The hand withdrew. The mirror went dark. Mai shook Hui again, harder this time. You said you found the exit, remember? You said you found it. Where is it? Hui's mouth opened, but it was not his voice that answered. It was Mai's, echoing, broken, repeating her own question. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? The words bounced around the chamber, growing louder, more distorted, until they became a scream without sound. The candles went out. Only the cracked mirror still glowed. She felt it then, the pull. But it wasn't trying to take her. It was offering her a choice. She could join him, trade places, or leave him behind. The mirrors waited, silent, judging. She pressed her forehead to his, tears blinding her. I'm sorry. I don't know how to save you. His lips moved once more, barely a whisper. Remember me. The air grew colder. The stone beneath her cracked. And then everything shattered. She gasped awake, lying on the floor of the inn. The real inn, room 2. The walls were still. The light above flickered softly. She sat up, alone. No Huey, only his jacket folded beside her. Inside it, a pocket watch. Its hands pointed to 12, frozen. She opened the door and stepped into the hallway. Room 5 was sealed. Room 1 was gone. The mirrors along the corridor were covered again. But one of them had a smear of blood across the cloth. She walked downstairs slowly. The innkeeper stood at the reception desk, smiling. This time, her face was visible, and it was Hui's, twisted, stretched, wearing a smile that didn't fit. Mai didn't speak, didn't cry. She walked past the desk, out the front door, and into the clearing. The sun was rising. The forest stood still. The inn behind her did not disappear. It waited, and from one of its upper windows, a white-eyed figure watched her walk away. The morning air tasted wrong. It was cool, yes, but stale. Like it had been bottled underground and only now released to the surface. The trees loomed larger than before, their bark darker, their branches twisted in ways that made them resemble outstretched arms. The clearing remained the same size, and yet Mai felt it shrinking with every step she took away from the inn. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Behind her, she knew the windows watched. The walls listened. And someone, stood just inside the threshold, smiling with a face that no longer belonged to it. She reached the tree line. Birdsong had not returned. No wind stirred the leaves. The world beyond the inn was unnaturally quiet. Then she heard footsteps, soft, barefoot, coming from behind. She turned, heart lodged in her throat, but no one was there, only grass, her footprints, and a new path. It hadn't been there yesterday. A narrow trail had carved itself through the forest. Flattened grass, bent branches, dirt worn into soft, unnatural curves. The trees parted as if moved aside by invisible hands. Something had walked this path recently. and it had wanted to be followed. Mai hesitated. Then she remembered the watch. She pulled it from her pocket. The hands still hadn't moved, but now there was a faint ticking sound from within it. A pulse. She clutched it tight and stepped onto the path. The forest was dense, but the trail guided her with deliberate ease. No missteps, no thorns, no misleading forks. After several minutes, the trees grew thinner, then stopped. In front of her stood a structure. Not the inn, something older. It resembled a chapel, but it had no cross. Its roof sagged, covered in moss and rotting leaves. The wooden door was rotted half through, but what caught her attention most was the window. There was only one, set high into the wall, and behind it, a face. Lynn, pale, wide-eyed. Mouth open in a silent scream. Mai rushed forward, but the door wouldn't budge. It wasn't locked. It simply didn't want to open. She stepped back and looked again at the structure. And that was when she saw it. The second door, on the side wall. A door that hadn't been there a second ago. Steel, bolted, stained with rust and something darker. She approached, heart pounding. Etched into the metal was a single phrase, in handwriting that resembled her own. Only the remembered may enter. She touched the handle. It burned. She yanked her hand back. Her palm now bore a mark, the same symbol etched on the mirror frame in room 1. A spiral within a spiral. She tried again. This time, the door creaked open. The hallway inside was pitch black. She stepped through. The door shut behind her. Total darkness. Until a light blinked on. Then another. Flickering bulbs hung from exposed wires overhead, revealing a narrow corridor lined with doors. Dozens of them. Some open, some shut. All whispering. She walked past them. Each door offered a memory. The first one she opened showed a school hallway, lockers dented and faded. She saw herself at 13, alone, clutching a notebook, tears on her face. A voice behind her. "You'll never be enough." She slammed the door shut. The next showed a funeral, her grandmother's hand slipping from hers. The next, the river. The girl she didn't save. The one who didn't scream, just sank. Mai turned away, breathing hard. Each door showed her a moment she wanted to forget. Each one burned the image deeper into her mind. At the end of the hallway was a mirror. Not cracked, not warped, perfectly clean. And in its reflection, Lynn stood behind her. Mai spun. No one, but in the mirror, Lynn reached forward. Mouth moving soundlessly, Mai stared. She read the lips. 3 words. I never left. The mirror rippled. Mai reached toward it. Her hand passed through, cold, like mist. She stepped in, and the world changed. The chapel vanished. Now she was standing in a long dining hall. Candles floated above a massive table covered in dishes she recognized. Food from old family gatherings, meals with friends, things she hadn't tasted in years. And seated around the table, herself, many versions, all slightly wrong. One weeping, one laughing too hard, one mouthing silent screams. And at the head of the table, Lynn, the real one, eyes dull, skin pale. She was bound to the chair. her lips stitched shut. Mai ran to her, hands trembling. The moment she touched her, the room flickered. The table disappeared. The chairs collapsed into ash. Only Lynn remained. She looked up, tears in her eyes. Mai reached for the threads, holding her mouth shut. As she began to pull, the air screamed. Not with sound, with pressure. Reality banked, walls folded. A wind rose from nowhere, bringing with it the stench of rot and smoke and time long dead. Behind her, the door was gone. Only a single voice remained, cold, flat. You shouldn't have found her. Mai tore the last thread loose. Lynn gasped, then sobbed. She whispered, "It's still wearing Dewey," and the lights exploded. Darkness consumed them again, but this time they were together. And something behind them began to knock, soft, steady, 3 times. Then silence. The knocking faded. 3 soft raps, then nothing. Mai pressed her back to the wall, shielding Lynn with her body, as the dark around them thickened like a living thing. It was silent again, but not empty. The shadows held their breath, and something on the other side of that silence waited to inhale. She didn't know how long they sat there. Time in this place was liquid. It stretched, folded, curled inward on itself like a spider devouring its own web. The longer they stayed, the more Mai felt her memories fray, as if the inn, or whatever this place truly was, fed on the small truths people used to hold themselves together. Lynn shivered behind her. "I saw him," she whispered. Mai didn't need to ask who. "He looked like Dewey," Lynn continued, her voice paper-thin. But it wasn't. His face moved wrong, like it remembered how to smile, but had forgotten why. Mai nodded slowly. "It's wearing them, like costumes, like masks stitched from memory." Lynn leaned her head against the wall. "I heard him calling me, from the hallway." His voice was perfect, but not warm. A moment passed, then Lynn asked, "Do you still remember what we were doing before we came here?" Mai opened her mouth, stopped. Her hands began to tremble. "I remember the car," she said slowly. "I remember the shortcut, trees, and a map. But the rest, it's like paper soaked in water, just smeared colors." Lynn looked up. "Then we have to leave now, before we lose the rest." They stood, the floor groaning underfoot as though it disliked the movement. The air shifted. The darkness lightened just enough to show a new hallway ahead. Walls of cracked plaster, faint, flickering lights overhead. A corridor neither of them had seen before. Or maybe they had. And had simply forgotten. The hallway led downward into what looked like the inn's basement. The air there was colder, thicker. They could hear humming, mechanical. A distant droning thrum that seemed to vibrate through the walls like blood through veins. At the base of the stairs was a door marked with a faded plaque, "Boiler Room," but underneath, in crooked, etched scratches, no signal, no exit. Mai tried the handle. It opened. The room beyond wasn't mechanical. It was tiled. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, blinking erratically. Wires hung from the ceiling like vines. In the center stood a single table with an old, dust-covered rotary phone. The receiver was off the hook, dangling. The dial spun on its own, then stopped. A sound clicked through the receiver. A voice, male, distorted. Faintly familiar. Hello? Mai froze. The voice continued. This is Officer Bao from the Dalat station. If anyone can hear this, please respond. We received your last signal, then you vanished. Lin rushed forward, grabbed the receiver. Help us, she breathed. We're trapped. The inn, it moves. It eats people. We're not alone in here. Static surged. Then, what inn? Mai leaned in. The one without a name. We stayed one night. There were 4 of us. Silence. Then, very slowly, the voice replied. There is no inn in that region. The land was cleared, burned down 10 years ago after the last disappearances. Lin's fingers went limp. The receiver slipped. The dial began to spin again. This time it clicked to a different line. A different voice answered, one they both knew. Mai, Dwi. His tone was gentle, too gentle. You shouldn't have left me. The others stayed. You should too. Mai backed away. The lights dimmed. The walls began to hum louder, vibrating with something deep and hungry. The door behind them slammed shut. A second voice joined the first. Wheeze, slower, hollow. Don't run this place. It's the only thing left that remembers us. The wires on the ceiling began to move, like snakes waking from hibernation. They dropped low, slithering toward the floor, seeking ankles, wrists, throats. Mai grabbed Lin's hand. Run! They darted back toward the door. It was gone. Only wall now. The floor cracked beneath them. Tiles fell away, and beneath the room was another space, one not built by human hands. Carved stone, endless stairs descending into something too vast to exist. From the hole came a sound, not a voice, a signal. Ting, 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 like the bell on the front desk, but warped, slowed. Stretched across centuries, Mai turned. The phone on the table had begun to melt. The dial liquefied, dripping down like tar. The cord writhed like a dying animal. Then, one final sound, a voice made of static and memory. There is no signal where the dead forget. The lights blew out. They fell into black together. And the inn whispered their names, softly, like a lullaby, sung through broken teeth. Mai awoke to the sound of water dripping, steady, measured, too deliberate to be natural. Drip, drip, drip. The air was damp and heavy, the kind of humidity that clung to skin and thoughts. Darkness pressed around her, but not the void from before. This was different. It had weight, texture, like she stood inside a memory that was rotting from the inside out. A faint, pulsing light flickered ahead. She turned to check on Lin. Lin was gone. Mai's breath caught in her throat. She called her name once, then again, softer, because the darkness around her seemed to listen, and the dripping slowed as if to hear better. A low hum rumbled beneath her feet. She moved toward the light. The tunnel opened into a vast cavern, but not a natural one. The space had walls, buildings, streets, an entire town buried deep below the inn. Homes with broken windows, street lamps bent at odd angles, park benches overgrown with vines that had no soil. And in the middle of the square, impossibly intact, stood a statue. It was a woman, stone-skinned, eyes hollow. She wore the same black dress as the innkeeper. Mai stepped closer. At the statue's base, words had been etched in faded paint. To those who chose to forget, we gave silence. To those who remembered, we gave shape. To those who stayed, we became. The lights above blinked. Not bulbs, not flame, but faces. Glowing, flickering faces embedded in the stone walls of the buildings. Some screamed silently, some wept. Some were turned away, blurred as if erased from existence. The town pulsed, alive. Mai backed away slowly, her feet crunching over gravel that squirmed like bones in thin skin. Then she saw the shadow, tall, thin, gliding across the far side of the square. It didn't walk, it slid. And it wore Dewey's face. But Dewey was gone. She knew it now. Whatever had worn his smile earlier, whatever had looked through his eyes, it was never him. The thing paused beneath a broken street lamp and turned. Its head twitched once, then tilted too far to the left. Its neck cracked with the sound of dry branches breaking underfoot. It opened its mouth. Inside was not a throat, but a hallway. A long, narrow corridor that seemed to stretch forever, lined with doors that whispered as they breathed. Mai ran. She ducked behind a collapsed wall, her heart pounding loud enough to echo through the walls of the buried town. Her hands shook. Her lips moved in silent prayer to gods she never believed in. The creature didn't chase her, not at first. Instead, it spoke, but it didn't use sound. The walls of the town spoke for it. A chorus of voices that rose from the stone itself. This was once a real place, a quiet town, a forgotten stop between destinations. Until people like you passed through. Until you left your fear behind and we learned to wear it. Mai covered her ears, but the words pressed into her skull like needles. The town began to change. Buildings peeled apart, streets shifted. The statue in the center turned its head toward her and blinked. She ran. The street she took was too straight. It led her back into a house with no doors. The wallpaper bled. Photographs on the wall showed her face in places she had never been, wearing clothes she didn't own, standing with people she didn't recognize, all of them staring at her, all of them smiling with teeth that were too sharp, too white. She tore the photos from the wall. Behind them were more faces, not printed, etched into the wall itself, screaming. One of them was Lynn. She turned, and the door was there, a wooden door that pulsed with light behind the cracks. She opened it without thinking and found herself in a bedroom. Her bedroom, the one from childhood. Every object in place, except for the bed. The sheets were stained, the mattress sunken, and something breathed beneath it, slow, deep, wet. She stepped backward. The light bulb overhead flickered violently, then shattered. And in that instant of broken light, something crawled from beneath the bed. Not fast, but deliberate. Lynn, or what was left of her. Her eyes were missing, her lips stitched again, but her hands reached out, pleading. Mai fell to her knees. I'm sorry. I didn't come sooner. I tried. I tried to bring us home. Lynn tilted her head, and her mouth moved. This time, the thread tore on its own. She spoke in a voice that was both hers and not. You never left. None of us did. The inn is the town. The town is the memory. Then her body dissolved into ash, and the walls screamed. All of them, all at once. Mai covered her face, but the scream wasn't pain. It was joy. Something had been born. Something had remembered. She opened her eyes and found herself back in the square, alone, the statue gone, the lights off. Only silence remained, and at the center of the square now stood a new door, red, tall, breathing. The knob was warm when she touched it. Behind her, she heard the town exhale, and the bell rang again. Ting, ting, ting. She opened the door and stepped through. Mai stepped through the red door, expecting darkness. Instead, she found light. Blinding, white, endless. It wasn't warm. It wasn't cold. It wasn't anything. Just empty. She stood on nothing, and yet she didn't fall. The door vanished behind her, devoured by the horizonless void. No sound, no wind, no breath. Even her own footsteps were stolen from her, swallowed before they touched whatever surface held her body. Then, a voice, soft, old, her own. Do you remember how it started? The whiteness shifted, folded inward. A ripple of movement passed beneath her, and suddenly she stood not in void, but in the clearing. The field, bright green grass swaying gently. The trees rose around her again, the same as they were on the first day. She turned, and the inn stood behind her, still weather-worn, still without a sign. Its windows glowed faintly, welcoming, patient. The front door was ajar. Mai stepped forward, but something caught her eye. In the grass, 4 shadows, 4 sets of footprints, fresh, leading out of the inn and vanishing at the edge of the clearing. She followed them, her breath catching. One set belonged to her, another to Lynn. The others she couldn't be sure. She reached the edge of the clearing and saw them, Dewey, Huey, and Lynn. Sitting beneath the tall pine trees, faces turned toward the sun, smiling, but not at her, at nothing, at everything, like they remembered something beautiful that she had forgotten. She called out. They didn't hear. She ran to them, fell to her knees, touched Hui's shoulder. It crumbled beneath her fingers, like ash. No, not ash. Dust from a dream long dissolved. The wind picked up. It didn't howl. It hummed. A low rhythmic melody, like a lullaby played on an old phonograph. The trees swayed to its tune, and the shadows at the edge of the woods stretched toward her. Mai stood. The figures of her friends faded, not in pain, not in fear, but in release, and then she understood they were never meant to leave. The inn hadn't taken them. They had given themselves to it, because in the walls, in the mirrors, in the stitched halls of memory and guilt, they had found peace. They had let go. Mai turned back to the inn. Its shape wavered. The windows blinked. The door pulsed one final time. She walked to it. Each step felt lighter. The weight of what she had seen, what she had done, slipping away like dust from her coat. At the threshold she paused. Inside, silence, but not emptiness. The sound of chairs gently rocking, of a bell once more. Ting! And she remembered. The girl in the river. The locked room, the forgotten lies, all of it. And then she forgot. Because the moment she stepped inside, the inn disappeared. Just like that. No collapse, no thunder. Only a soft rustle in the grass, as if it had never stood there at all. And when the morning sun rose again, the field was empty. No building, no trail, no sign. Only 4 sets of footprints pressed gently into the dew-covered grass, fading, one by one, until only the field remained.